refer to it as it was a very good year. It was 1986, and we were about to embark on an adventure. There was going to be an institute to study some of the great problems that were facing mankind, and maybe cures would be evolved, and protocols, and new drugs, and it was an exciting time. And to be involved in that at the beginning with some of the giants in science in our community and at the hospitals here was a very wonderful time.
Well, Dr. Henry Barnett's contribution to science and his legacy is really tremendous. I think the things that made Barney a very successful clinical scientist were the same things that made him an excellent clinician. He was a very careful observer, he was a very clear thinker, and he paid attention to detail. The discovery that aspirin was effective in preventing stroke was probably Barney's greatest accomplishment. And the impact of that globally is tremendous, and the amount of morbidity and mortality that aspirin therapy, a cheap, effective therapy that could be used globally, has made, well, it's really almost immeasurable. I think it's also important to recognize his impact on the surgical management of carotid disease. The ECIC bypass study and the NACID study for carotid disease really define current surgical management of atherosclerotic disease. And you combine the medical impact and the surgical impact, well, really, Barney has set out the blueprint of how we manage stroke in 2011, and that's quite a legacy.
Dr. Stiller established the first and the most dynamic organ transplantation program in Canada. And because of this, he became the champion of organ donation and organ transplantation for a generation of people who were interested in this area of research. He organized the first clinical trial of the drug cyclosporine, and that trial led to the formation of a program worldwide where cyclosporine was used as an anti-rejection drug for generations, and is still being used as of today. At Robarts, he established a world-class research program in immunology and inspired and attracted best and brightest to come to London to train and to work. And his impact is immense, and he has been really a pioneer in this area in Canada.
20 years later, Ramsay Gunton was one of the major reasons I came to London and still gave me one of the biggest scares I had in coming to London. Ramsay was part of that cadre, one of the leading parts of the cadre that really had the vision, both in terms of building University Hospital as a major clinical research enterprise, and then extending that to the Robarts Research Institute. He was really a Wayne Gretzky in terms of community building. He knew where the puck was going to be in terms of clinical research and in translational research at a point where nobody even knew what those words meant. And the scary part, when I became the Ramsay Gunton Professor, initially I thought it was just one of those perks that go along with getting a new job. On the other hand, when I appreciated the contributions that Ramsay had made and the kind of person he was, that one of the challenges I think in my career, especially early on, was to emulate or at least not be an embarrassment for Ramsay Gunton, who I think remains the model of a translational scientist and a community builder in translational science.
Dr. Charles Drake was one of the leading neurosurgeons of our time. In fact, he pioneered surgery of what is called basilar aneurysms. Now, these aneurysms are located at the base of the brain. They're outpouchings of the blood vessels themselves. And up until his work, they were actually considered to be inoperable. It absolutely changed the way we think about treating intracranial aneurysms. For that, he was recognized as a Companion of the Order of Canada. His work didn't stop there, though. He really became integrally involved with the establishment of the Robarts Research Institute, and he was one of the original group that sat down and had this vision of creating a translational research institute that would take basic biology understandings, link it to imaging, and then move it back into clinical treatment and investigation. Dr. Drake's impact on the Robarts Research Institute directly was through his support of the investigators. So it wasn't uncommon for you to be, particularly myself actually, as a young investigator, to be wandering the halls and then be stopped by Charlie. And he would ask you what were you doing in your lab? How was this working out? How did it actually link to other things in the Institute? And he wasn't interested in a 2-second answer. He actually wanted to know exactly what was going on, and he would follow up on that. So his vision really did get translated into his day-to-day activities. He paid a great deal of attention to what we as new investigators were doing at the time, and that stayed with him for as long as I knew him before his death.
Among those who were a very relevant and important part of the beginnings of the Robarts during the planning stages was Richard Ivey. Dick Ivey was no stranger to health-related matters. He and his remarkable wife, Beryl, had funded initiatives in the city before that cut across all the healthcare spectrum. And he was enthusiastic about this at the very beginning. One of Canada's great philanthropists, Dick Ivey, continues to share his resources with important things in our country, not just in London area, but all over. He's been known as Mr. London, but it's too confining an appellation for the late J. Allyn Taylor, who lived to be almost 100, and during his years in the financial and business community left his mark on Canada. But more importantly to us, he was part of the whole Robarts agenda right from the very beginning. Its initial chairman, and he became an important cog in the process that led to the opening of the Robarts Institute. I became very close to the project for a couple of reasons. I was on the board at University Hospital, and also I worked for the Blackburn Group, which was the London Free Press, television and radio and so forth. And Walter J. Blackburn was the publisher and CEO of the company, and he had been the chairman of the board of the hospital and part of London Health Sciences for a long time. And he saw the vision. Unfortunately, he passed away in '83 and missed the opening of Robarts, but I know he would have been thrilled to see this come to fruition. The Robarts Institute really had a great connection to University Hospital because it was both philosophically and physically attached to the medical school. And the CEO at the hospital at the time was Patrick Blewett. So Pat Blewett was a very important part of the beginning of Robarts. He came on stream at the start, and he was with us in the founding board, and something I've always been proud of, that I was part of the very beginning of the Robarts and was able to rub shoulders with not only the great scientists and physicians and researchers, but with people in the lay community who were giving of their resources and their time. And we saw the genesis of something great, which, as everyone knows, has just grown to become one of the most important facilities in North America.